Our prayer this morning is by my friend and colleague, Vanessa Southern. So much undone, so much to do, so much to heal in us and the world, so much to acquire: a meal, a healthy body, a fit one, a lover, a job, a better job, proof we have and are enough, just around the corner of now. And up against it, the reality of all that falls short and the limits of today. We honor the limits. If your body won't do what it used to, for right now, let it be enough. If your mind won't stop racing or can't think of the word, let it be enough. If you are here utterly alone and in despair, be all that here with us. If today you cannot sing because your throat hurts or you don't have the heart for music, be silent. When the offering plate goes around, if you don't have money to give or the heart to give, let it pass. The world won't stop spinning on her axis if you don't rise to all occasions today. Love won't cease to flow in your direction. Your heart won't stop beating. All hope won't be lost. You are part of the plan for this world's salvation. Of that I have no doubt. The world needs its oceans of people striving to be good, to carry us to the shores of hope and wash fear from the beachheads, and cleanse all wounds so they can heal. But oceans are big, and I am sure there are parts that don't feel up to the task of the whole some days. Rest, if you must, then, like the swimmer lying on her back who floats, or the hawk carried on cushions of air. Rest in pews made to hold weary lives, in space carved out for the doing of nothing much but being. Perhaps then you will feel in your bones, in your weary heart, the aching, healing sense that this is enough, even this, that we are enough, you are enough, enough. For these and all the meditations of our hearts unspoken in this hour, I say, Amen. Our time for all ages today is the legend of stone soup. Once upon a time, somewhere in post-war Eastern Europe, there was a great famine in which people jealously hoarded whatever food they could find, hiding it even from their friends and neighbors. One day, a wandering stranger came into the village and began asking questions as if he planned to stay for the night. "There's not a bite to eat in the whole province," he was told. "Better keep moving on." "Oh, I have everything I need," he said. "In fact, I was thinking of making some stone soup to share with all of you." He pulled an iron cauldron from his wagon, filled it with water, and built a fire under it. Then, with great ceremony, he drew an ordinary-looking stone from a velvet bag and dropped it into the water. By now, hearing the rumor of food, most of the villagers had come to the square or were watching from their windows. As the stranger sniffed the broth and licked his lips in anticipation, hunger began to overcome their skepticism. "Ah," the stranger said to himself, rather loudly, "I do like a tasty stone soup. Of course, stone soup with cabbage, that's hard to beat." Soon a villager approached hesitantly, holding a cabbage that he had retrieved from his hiding place, and added it to the pot. "Capital!" cried the stranger. "You know, I once had stone soup with cabbage and a bit of salt beef as well, and it was fit for a king." The village butcher managed to find some salt beef, and so it went through potatoes and onions, carrots, mushrooms, and so on, until there was indeed a delicious meal for all, with the cooperation of the whole town. It was the best meal anyone had had in years. And the villagers knew that they would never go hungry again, now that they knew how to make soup from stones. When I was 10 years old, at just around this time of year, my mother gave me a book called Just Enough is Plenty. I actually found it on her shelf the other day. It is a Hanukkah story about a little boy named Malka. Malka lived in a village in Poland, and his father was a tailor. Usually, the family celebrated Hanukkah with lots of yummy food and a house full of guests, and the children were all given coins to play dreidel with. This year in the story it is different, though. The family has fallen on hard times, as most in the village have. And there isn't enough money to have a house full of people or even any spare coins to play dreidel. But there is just enough to buy some extra eggs and potatoes, to splurge on extra oil, to make delicious latkes for the family. But that night, after they have lit the candles on the menorah and placed it in the window, a poor peddler comes to the door. "I saw the Hanukkah lights in your window," he says, and so the family invites him in. Malka worries that there is not enough food for this unexpected guest, but each member of the family takes a latke off of the stack on their own plate and puts it on a plate for the stranger. And suddenly there is just enough for him as well. And in a lovely twist of fate, after dinner, the stranger offers up a pocket full of coins for the children to play dreidel with. I loved that story and was, kind of inspired by it, you could say, at that ripe old age of 10. I was inspired to write a song, which my mother was kind enough to listen to and even transcribe so that she could accompany me on the piano. And I still remember the words. It went like this: "Just enough is plenty, needn't have more. If you find that you have spare, go to your neighbor and share, share, share. If you share your plenty, you will soon have more. You will find that you will gain friends and love and everything." Thank you. I've been thinking deeply about stories of sharing this week. And And someone told me a great story the other day, and I can't for the life of me remember who it was. And I spent the first half of this week asking everyone, did you tell me this story? But I was driving myself crazy. So I've decided to just tell you the story as I remember it. And if it is your story, please tell me later and correct the details. So the story is about a little kid in a big family, and it's the holidays, and this child is given an entire box of chocolates. And it's a rare gift. And the child is so excited to have his very own box of chocolates, and he is guarding it jealously. Well, the family has a guest over, and the parents suggest to the boy that he might want to offer the guest one of his chocolates. And he is horrified. "These are mine," he says. And the dad or the mom, I forget which, says to him, "Yes." That's the great thing about having something that is yours. You get to be the one to share it. And suddenly the boy sees the box of chocolates in a whole new light, and he very proudly offers a chocolate to the guest. And then, because that feels so good, he offers one to each of his siblings and to his parents, and soon there are no chocolates left. But he is beaming, because as it turns out, there is more joy in sharing the chocolates than in eating them. The other story that came to mind when I thought about giving sacrificially and about giving up something precious to you so that others may receive it was the story of the Danes during World War II. I learned the story, and perhaps you did, this way. When the Germans occupied Denmark, they sent out a decree: all Jews must wear a yellow armband with a Star of David. And that night, an underground message went out from the palace. The king has replied to the Germans that one Dane is exactly the same as the next Dane. He himself will wear the first Star of David, and he expects that every loyal Dane will do the same. The next day in Copenhagen, almost the entire population wore armbands showing a Star of David, making the Jews with the armbands indistinguishable from the rest of the crowd. The legend of Denmark's King Christian wearing a yellow star is an inspiring one. Ordinary citizens, following the example of a courageous leader, defy their overlords by selflessly putting themselves in harm's way to prevent the persecution of a defenseless minority. As it turns out, this story is not exactly factual. Although the Danes did undertake heroic efforts to shelter their Jewish citizens and help them escape from the Nazis, there is no real-life example of the Danes donning the yellow star, nor did King Christian ever threaten to don it himself. In fact, Danish Jews never wore the yellow badge either, except for the very few who were finally deported to concentration camps. But the Danes did engage in symbolic gestures of defiance against their occupiers. They took part in strikes, and they took great risks to hide their Jewish neighbors and friends. A Swedish newspaper cartoon, probably the origin of this legend, depicted the monarch talking with the former Danish prime minister, who asks him, "What are we going to do, Your Majesty, if they make all the Jews wear yellow stars?" The king responds by saying, "We'll all have to wear yellow stars." The arrest and deportation of Danish Jews was finally ordered and carried out on October 2nd, 1943. But by then, nearly all the Jews in Copenhagen had already been warned and gone into hiding, while government officials secretly negotiated an agreement with Sweden to receive them. Only 284 of an estimated 7,000 Jews in the area were rounded up. And over the next several weeks, most of them made their precarious way to Sweden on fishing boats. Although the legend of the armbands may not be true in its specifics, it was certainly true enough in spirit. The rescue of thousands of Danish Jews was accomplished through the efforts of thousands of policemen and government officials and physicians and everyday people. They didn't have much, but they offered up their own safety to ensure the safety of others. And it was terrifying, but it also gave their lives purpose, a deeper, richer understanding of and commitment to their values and morals. And it saved many people. Ordinary citizens taking a stand when they see that something isn't right. They may have felt powerless, but they were enough in that moment to make a difference. So often, we don't feel like enough, like we are enough, like we have enough. This can be particularly challenging during the holidays when people are buying gifts and decorating and creating these picture-perfect holiday tableaus. And the romantic Christmas movies are playing on a loop on the Hallmark and the Lifetime channels. Why do I watch them? I don't know. I have this love-hate thing going on with these holiday movies. They fill you with the holiday spirit while simultaneously making you feel bad about your life. It's never like it is in those movies, is it? This morning's prayer was a beautiful invitation to feel like enough just by showing up. And that is our invitation to you each week here. But there's also something magical that happens when we give of ourselves, sometimes even sacrificially. When we suddenly see ourselves as having something to give, rather than living in that place of scarcity and fear. When we contribute our only bit of food, when we share our precious chocolates or one of our potato pancakes, when we sacrifice our own safety or comfort because it will make a difference to someone else, suddenly we are blessed. Suddenly our enough is more than enough. Suddenly there is enough not just for physical needs, but enough to feed the spirit. Suddenly each of our own small offerings gathered together becomes abundance. And it is that spirit that we celebrate with the story of stone soup, with the holiday season when we manage to approach it in the right way, and with this community. You know, there's a P.S. to that story I told earlier about the Hanukkah folktale and the little song that I wrote. My mother was in the choir then at our UU church, and she was close with the choir director at that time, and she told her about my little song. And the choir director asked me if I would like to sing that song to the congregation the following Sunday. And I was so proud. But I was also painfully shy at that age. and I wasn't sure I could do it. I was pretty sure I couldn't do it, actually, and I told her so. So she asked me if I would like someone else to sing it, and that was a way of sharing my song without being on the spot. And I was greatly relieved, and I told her that was a wonderful idea. So another little girl, a year or two younger than me, stepped forward. And that morning in church, as I listened to her sing, "Just Enough is Plenty," I glared at her resentfully from my seat. That was my song, and I didn't want to share. Hey, nobody's perfect. But this is why we are on a spiritual journey. We can grow and learn and become better people than we used to be. I've learned since then that people are not mind readers, and they will believe what you say. So you'd better mean what you say. I've learned since then that you have to take risks sometimes and do what scares you, because if you don't, you will miss out. And I've also learned and am still learning, with help from friends and family and with help from this community, the important lesson that though I am not perfect, I am enough. Each of us is enough. And if we have a song in our hearts, it is up to us to sing out. And each of us taking the risk of sharing our own song with each other is what, in the end, creates abundance. So, hit it, Roger. Just enough is plenty, needn't have more. If you find that you have spare, go to your neighbor and share, share, share. If you share your plenty, you will soon have more. You will find that you will gain friends and love and everything. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.